Hello, I'd like to welcome you to Young Martin's Reels. Today's project is going to be repairing this Daiwa B-250. Now, I've been told that previously about the only way to fix this thing was to replace the chassis on it. But I have come up with a repair that's going to work a lot better. I'm going to pull it apart and show you what kind of fix I've come up with for it. Some of you may agree with it, some of you may not. Okay, I've opened it up so that you can see what the actual problem is with the reel. And if you grab hold of the spool here, see the amount of motion you've got there? That's a tremendous amount of motion in that spool. Now, if you look really close right here, you will see that the problem is the crosswind block is moving that much on the post. Okay, now you can probably see better. Okay, see how that crosswind block is moving? Like that. Okay, so what we need to do is try to repair that post. And what I've come up with, like I said, this was not my idea. Someone else previously did it to me. And they've done theirs years ago, and it's working for them. I'm going to do mine a little different from what they did. Okay. Now, what we've got here is we have an inside diameter of this gear that is 8.04. Well, I imagine this post was originally an 8 millimeter, and this hole was probably an 8.1 millimeter, or maybe even an 8. Probably that's a little too tight for clearance, so probably an 8.1 or 8.2. I don't think it was probably all the way up to this 8.4 that it is right now. There's on this angle, depending on how you measure it, it changes because there's some wear in there. It's not perfectly even. All right. So, but the post down here is heavily worn, and if you look at it, you will find that it is 7.87. Sometimes I get 8.5, sometimes I get 8.4, depending on how I measure it. But that's giving me a clearance of about 15 thousandths in there. Well, that's way too many. Okay, now the previous individual, what they did is they took tinfoil and they cut a long strip of tinfoil and they glued it on and they wrapped it around and around and around, gluing it as they went. Okay, I'm going to do things a little bit different from what they did because that's very tedious and trying to hold everything. I don't have that kind of dexterity anymore. So, but first thing I got to do is I got to scrub this and get it all cleaned out. So I can't have any, if I'm going to glue anything on here, it's got to be something that's going to hold. So I've got to get rid of any grease that's here if I'm going to glue anything to it. So stand by for a moment and we'll get this scrubbed up. Okay, I've scrubbed out this inside here. Got it nice and clean inside. And after I scrubbed it with hot soapy water and rinsed it out good, I came back and cleaned it with acetone. So I think it's reasonably clean. I don't think there's too much grease left on the post itself. Maybe in some of the corners or something there might be. But overall, no. Okay, now we've determined that this post is right near 8 millimeter. All right. Now, how tall is the post? That's another good question. Okay, about 3 millimeters. Okay, so if we take 8 and multiply it, I'm sorry, take 8, add 3 to it, we get 11, add 3 more to it for the other side, and that gives us about 14. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw in an extra one for 15 because we've got to wrap around the corner. We're going to try to create a circle out of aluminum foil that's about 15 millimeters in diameter. Now, this doesn't have to be precise, I don't believe. Okay. Just curious how big one of these bearings are I got laying here. And they're 16. And that'll work. I'm going to use that as a use this bearing as a template. Matter of fact, what were these over here that I replaced the other day? Were they? No, they're even bigger. Now they're the same size. Okay. So we're going to use that as a template, and we'll trim the edges off. All right. This tin foil, if you measure the thickness of it, comes out to about 0.02 millimeters thick. So if we double it, or it's about 0.02 millimeters thick. There we go, between 0.2 and 0.4, yeah, depending on the measurement, how hard I push. So what we're going to do, we need to take up 15 thousandths around this post, okay? And I'm trying to explain this as I go. I've got it in my head, but it's kind of difficult to explain, and I'm hoping you guys will understand as I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker, there we go, and I'm going to draw myself a circle around a doubled up piece of tin foil, like so. Now if I trim this off and leave none of the black, I should be somewhere right about 15 millimeters. And needless to say, I've done this before, so I know that it works. So it's just kind of hard for me to explain it. Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to cut this out. I ripped it out. This is what's left of it. That's what I pulled back out after it had been in there for several fishing trips. And the key, I think, is going to be having it well lubricated. Oh, you guys can't see. That's the problem with being zoomed in too close. A lot of times you can't see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to back this out a little bit while I mix up some epoxy. Is I'm going to coat one side of this with glue, and I'm going to try to stay away from the absolute edges, even though that's going to end up being where it needs the glue to be. Okay, now I'm going to set this other one on top of it. Like so. Press it down a little bit to get the glue to kind of press out. Okay, then we're going to do one more stretch of epoxy on the other side. Okay, now I have this gear nice and clean, but I don't want it to be nice and clean. Okay, I want this gear to have grease on it. And the reason I want that is in the event that any epoxy squeezes out and gets on the gear, I don't want it to stick there. So now I'm going to pick this up and set it into the center of the gear, like so. All right, like that. Then we're going to take all of this and turn it upside down and set it onto that post. And then we're going to press and get it to press that down in there. There we go. Okay, I've got some excess glue right there. All right, now we have a gear that is pressed down on there. I've got no rock in there whatsoever. And we're going to give this 24 hours to cure. And I will come back tomorrow We'll take this back apart, examine what we have, make sure that it's on there properly. I mean, we could probably pull it off right now and see that it's on there properly, but I'm afraid that it might suck it off since it hasn't cured all the way. And we make sure that the center is pressed down good, because we don't want that center rubbing on the crosswind block as the crosswind block goes over it. Okay, because it's going to sit in here like so and right on the top of it. We don't want any of that sticking up. All right. So let's give it 24 hours. If you want to see it up close, there you go. There it is in there. And if you look, there's no extra play on this. Okay, we've eliminated that. So let's let it cure, and I'll be back tomorrow and we'll give it a try. All right, it's been 24 hours, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I've already taken this off and looked at it. And what I found was that by the first time I did this, I used just the 2 pieces of tin foil and pressed them down in there, and it worked fine. It formed right around it, and it held. It did everything it was supposed to do. It did ball up a little bit at the bottom, but that didn't seem to hurt anything. Okay, well, on this one, when I did that, what happened, because I had the JB Weld in there, that made it thicker. So when I pushed it down, it actually cut the top layer of tinfoil off and squished it down to the bottom and left. So what I've got is a layer of JB Weld, a layer of aluminum foil, and then a layer of JB Weld. But you know what? JB Weld is really tough stuff. So I trimmed off what got squished down to the bottom. I trimmed all that off. And now we've got our gear that sits in there. And guess what? There's no wobble left. All right, so let's reassemble this thing, and let's see if I have accomplished what I was after. Let's go ahead and grease up our gear. It's a snug fit. Okay. Go ahead and grease it. Top and bottom. Post. And the teeth on the gear. One thing I did notice yesterday when playing around with this is if you take and put the main gear into this, just the main gear, and try to rotate this, it will not rotate that way. You have to have the axle shaft in to hold the pinion gear in alignment so that it can turn. Otherwise, it just kicks off sideways. All right? So, just wanted you to know that. Okay, now remember how much motion there was here before? Let's take the gear out. Okay. There's just a slight bit of motion now compared to what it was. Okay. Oh, made a mistake. I do this more often than you can possibly believe. I know that this has to go on first, and I keep putting on Okay. You have to flip that into that position to get this to fit on here properly. Afterwards, you can move it. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead, put those screws in. All right, now look at the play in this compared to what we had before. So I'm going to call this a fix, at least for now. I may come back a year from now and take it apart and find out that it's all, the JB weld didn't hold up. But for now, I'm going to call this a fix. It's a whole lot better than it was. And we're going to put this back in the box and send it out to the boat and get it back to fishing again. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. If you'd like to see further videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. For now, that's Rick Stivers, the Young Martin's Reels, signing out.